Hello and welcome to For Wales, See Wales with me, Robin Morgan.
And me, Mel Owen.
Hello, Mel. How are you? I didn't expect you to do that at all. You made it sound like Pat Butcher.
It was only from the day that she had the cold. That isn't Mel's normal voice.
Fair.
That isn't Mel's normal voice.
We are sans Mel.
Yeah.
We're missing Mel.
Where is she, Rob?
So I have two thoughts.
Okay.
One, I think it's quite coincidental that last week she did an impression of Eleanor Morgan, and I feel like she's been silenced and kidnapped by the Welsh Labour Party.
Okay. Has she been kidnapped and silenced as like a punishment for the things she said, or do they think it will be useful to have someone who is able to do such a spitting image of Eleanor Morgan?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, like sort of one of the Melanias. She could be one of the Elenids.
Yeah, she could tour she could be doing North Wales while Eleanor is in South Wales.
I'd love the respect and the gaslighting for Mel Owen to come out in a blazer and say, "I'm Eleanor Morgan," and everyone would go, "No, is she?" Like I'd quite like that.
She'd have to take her shoes off on the train up to North.
Yeah, Mel wouldn't do that.
She would not do that.
Mel would not do that. That's one of my suggestions. Okay. The other suggestion is breaking news on the day that we're recording this is that there have been some charges on the UK general election betting stuff, and I feel like Mel has also been charged with this, and she's in prison because she bet on the winner of Gladiators or something.
By the time this comes out, you must have seen 15 people, including the former Welsh Conservative MP Craig Williams, have been charged with offensive by the Gambling Commission. One of these is also the Tory Senate member Russell George. Now, obviously, these are all charges at this point, nothing proven. So we're not going to go into detail on that. But it does beg the question, what would Mel illegally bet on?
Yeah, it's a good question. What's her vibe? What's she...
Oh, she's horses, isn't she?
Grand National.
Yeah. She was also pretty quiet when we talked about the greyhound racing ban.
Oh, that's where she is.
Yeah.
She's down the dogs. She's down the dogs, screaming, "Come on, Fido!"
There are some weirdly dog names. What other dog names? Fido, Rover?
Snowy.
Snowy?
I reckon that's like a small little cute. What's the animal who's on the Caesar dog food packets?
Oh,
what's that brand? What's that brand of dog?
You're asking the wrong person.
Are you a dog person?
No.
I'm not a dog person either.
Absolutely not. Allergic to dogs.
Sorry, this is going to completely... We're going to get cancelled for this.
We are absolutely going to get cancelled.
I don't mind them. I don't force them to race like Mel does.
Yeah, I mean, she has been wearing nicer and nicer clothes of late.
They're made of dogs.
I was thinking she got winnings.
Oh, right, yeah.
But she's not Cruella de Vil.
Yeah. I mean, she'd make a great Cruella de Vil.
That actually is the role she was born to play.
She would smash that.
Yeah. Do you worry that Mel might have been the glue that held this podcast together?
No. She's holding us back, Will. More Straight White Men podcasts.
Woo! Shall we move on to talk about some gambling Tories?
Always.
Allegedly.
Good save. So this was last year, wasn't it? This was last year's general election.
This was ahead of the general election.
We were working on a topical comedy panel show called What Just Happened for Radio Wales. And at the hour this broke, we were about to record our final show in Monmouth.
Oh,
and
brilliant.
The breaking news came through about sort of 6 p.m. before we recorded at 7 o'clock, that Craig Williams had been...
he was been investigated over allegations around...
The date of the placing bets.
He had... I mean, I believe even he has admitted that he has placed a bet.
Yeah, he said it was an error of judgment.
Yeah, he said it was an error of judgment. I actually broke the story about Russell George laying the bet, allegedly. I'm going to keep saying allegedly.
Yeah, that's nice. Because, we need a soundboard, allegedly. We can just keep pressing
in Mel's
it.
Voice.
Yeah. Allegedly.
She just doesn't speak like this.
She does. It's perfect. It's uncanny. It's like she's in the room.
Yeah. She's who's Ray Winston?
Yeah. He liked bets.
Put a bet on it.
Nah.
This really did cost the Conservatives Montgomeryshire.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah.
Obviously, Steve Witherden, the milkman, ended up winning it in the end. But I don't think there was a good chance of him winning before this moment. People really did. I mean, the betting saga, scandal, whatever you want to call it, I think really did set the tone for that election alongside Rishi Sunak announcing it in the rain.
Yeah, that and D-Day and conscription and everything. It was a catalogue of errors, wasn't it? It was like gaff after gaff after gaff.
15 people have been charged. These include, as we said, Russell George and
allegedly.
Also, Laura Saunders, the
Allegedly.
former Conservative Parliament candidate for Bristol North West. Her partner, Anthony Lee,
Allegedly.
who was a former director, who is a former campaigning director for the Conservatives.
I've already done it.
Okay. The director of the Welsh Conservatives, Thomas James.
Allegedly.
And Nick Mason, who is a former chief data officer for the party.
Allegedly.
This is all pending court proceedings. Don't make us crack out the extensive For Wales See Wales legal team.
Absolutely. It's a rat in a cage. Wearing a flat cap.
I mean, with this, what do you think? Why do you think it cut through so much people? Why do you think people got so angry about it?
I think it was the last that government, starting with sort of Partygate, I suppose, and everything else. It just became this thing of you one rule for them, one rule for us, and just using your position of power for your own personal gain. I think it was that, and it was PPI contracts, and it was what brought down Boris in terms of defending awful beard grabby man Chris Pincher. It was a pun. It was a pun name, Chris Pincher. No, because that's what Johnson said. He said Pincher by name, Pincher by nature. That was something that he said when about fucking abuse. Like this is how far. This is what we had to deal with for so many years. And I think that already
it does make you realise that maybe Keir Starmer isn't that bad.
Yeah, sure, absolutely, because he's got no sense of humour. But he, I think the betting thing, it was just, you've just been doing this the entire time, haven't you? You have no modicum of responsibility in this position in which you've been elected to do, and I think that's what cut through. You know, like, of course this has happened. Of course you did suitcases of wine. Of course you did all these kind of things. It was just the final nail in quite a metal coffin.
I think we should say that those who are charged are due to appear at Westminster Magistrates Court on the 13th of June.
If you want to go down.
If you want to go down, allegedly. At the time, speaking to the BBC, Craig Williams said, "I've clearly made a huge error of judgment. That's for sure, and I apologise." But he refused to comment on whether he knew about the election date when he placed the wager, saying it would be inappropriate while the Gambling Commission was investigating. So
he also put on such a small amount. I think he put like 100 quid on it. You know, this is why the country's economy was so bad. Have some faith in it. Put £1 million on. Take a loan out. Come on.
Well, speaking of the economy and government intervention, I think we need to speak about Scunthorpe and Port Talbot.
Yes.
So over the weekend, Keir Starmer recalled Parliament.
On a Saturday.
I know. Those poor MPs.
I know, Easter holidays, they've been brought back in. It was, I got a BBC breaking news alert to tell me that they were going to sit on a Saturday and stuff. And it's been quite a lot in the press, isn't it, in terms of we are going to save Scunthorpe. Exactly.
So it's not officially happened at this point, but nationalisation of British Steel by Sean Connery is absolutely on the table. And I don't think anyone's arguing, well, we don't need to step in to stop a major part of our infrastructure and kind of security, because steel is so vital for things like the ability to produce things for war, but also infrastructure projects. And if you're not able to create virgin steel through blast furnace, that's an issue. But a lot of people ask the question, why wasn't this done when it was Port Talbot?
Yeah. And I've heard a couple of people say that the world has changed from a safety point of view in the last 6 months in terms of being on a war footing, investing more in the military and defence spending and that kind of stuff, and also the Scunthorpe plant losing less money per day. I think it was like £700,000 or £800,000 a day as opposed to £1 million a day. Those are the two arguments I've heard, that it is a different thing. I'd also argue it's in the north of England, which politically Labour need more than an arguably Labour voting area. Which is just, if that ever enters into their thought process, that's absolutely disgraceful. Well, I think it being England, I think it does.
I'll speak in kind of the side of the UK government at this point as to why they didn't nationalise Port Talbot, that they are potentially nationalising Scunthorpe. So the first thing to say, from an infrastructure perspective, the type of steel produced in Scunthorpe is slightly different. So its uses, so it's used more for from like military purposes, large infrastructure projects, whereas in Port Talbot it would be mainly used for things like cars, cans, stuff like that. You can also say, fairly, that when they closed the blast furnaces at Port Talbot, that meant Scunthorpe were the last blast furnaces running in the UK, and you want to be able to produce steel, rather than recycle it.
So if it had come the other way around, maybe there would have been...
That is an argument they can make. While I have sympathy with the argument around the type of steel produced, I just can't get my head around the fact that... obviously, the biggest argument, which I think I do agree with them on, is steel production at Port Talbot hasn't closed forever. So what they're going to do is... I actually toured Port Talbot Steelworks. Have you ever been?
No, I haven't.
This was a few months before it closed.
What do you mean toured?
I toured the steelworks. Saw the blast furnaces in action.
Can you do that as a member of the public? Did you flash your press badge?
I did flash my press badge.
Nice.
I think with stuff like this, because it's such a fundamental thing, I wanted to see it and understand it, because there were so many questions around it. So what they've done in Port Talbot is they're going to be moving to what's called an electric arc furnace. So before they had blast furnaces, which is where you create virgin steel from iron ore, essentially. What they're going to do now is create this thing called an electric arc furnace, whereby what you do is you put in old steel and you kind of melt it down, and then you get better steel come out the other side. Now, the quality of that steel depends on the sort of steel you're putting in, but ultimately it means that you won't then be producing brand new steel from there. You'll be recycling it.
Yeah.
It requires less labour. It's less labour intensive, because essentially you've taken a big part of the process out.
Sure.
One of the reasons I went for the tour around it is because at the time there was an argument. Why close the blast furnaces while we're building the electric arc works? Because that's going to take a few years to build.
Yeah, and it's going to be a complete stop in it.
And the argument was, well, if you close, you can't safely run a blast furnace while you are constructing something next to where it is, because it's crazy when you're there. There was rail carts of essentially molten iron and steel just moving around. It's absolutely crazy. Like
Thomas the Tank in Hell.
It is. It is basically like if the devil conscripted Percy and the gang to facilitate hell.
I mean, let's pitch that.
Okay, yeah, Netflix do it.
We'll see. Fireman Sam absolutely losing his fucking mind.
There will be still steel production at Port Talbot. And the UK government have invested money in that. And a lot of the decisions were made before Labour came to power. So perhaps you can say to them, well, fair enough, you weren't there for the ultimate decision that was made around Port Talbot. There is still going to be steel there. Scunthorpe, it was a slightly different situation. But, and I think this is kind of the crucial thing, it's a lot of the language that was used, because people were calling for the nationalisation of Port Talbot.
Yeah.
And people have been doing it for years, haven't they?
Yeah.
Like anyone, especially in South Wales, knows that has been an argument that's been put forward. This is a matter of national security. We have to nationalise it. But Leonard Morgan, when Plaid suggested this, said it was like a pipe dream. They said, it's not serious. It's not kind of credible to make this argument. And now they are. And so I can understand some of the rationales they're putting forward, but I think it's also fair to just see this as a fundamental lack of prioritising Wales.
Yeah. It's a very harsh comparison, isn't it? When, it's not even sort of, 5 years ago the world has changed. This is within the space of a year, right?
I mean, I've got no sympathy with the idea that, the world's become more dangerous. The invasion of Ukraine was years ago.
Sure.
The reality is that we're still going to need steel production in terms of security, especially with, it kind of come as a surprise that Donald Trump was elected. It's not that the world has changed fundamentally. It's not that COVID suddenly happened or something like that.
Yeah.
I haven't got any sympathy with that argument. So speaking in Westminster, Liz Saville-Roberts, who's Plaid Cymru's Westminster leader, said, this government did not intervene in Wales. Plaid Cymru believes Port Talbot could and should receive equal treatment alongside Scunthorpe. The measure we are debating today would have been able to be used to save the blast furnaces at Tata Steel in Wales. People in Wales will not forget today. Today is a bitter, bitter disappointment for Port Talbot. Secretary of State for Wales, Joe Stevens, who's Labour, said that the situation was very different. It's the only site making virgin steel, and that's why it was a matter of national importance and strategic importance. I can see why UK Labour have intervened in Scunthorpe. I think that's absolutely, I understand why they're doing it.
Sure.
But what it demonstrates is that it wasn't completely off the table that they could have intervened in the same way.
It wasn't this pipe dream thing that Eleanor said.
It wasn't impossible.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, this is the thing, and that's why people sort of go back to COVID times and the PPI contracts and, the magic money tree from Theresa May era. There is... things can be moved around. Like,
ultimately, everything in politics is on the table if there is political will to do it.
Yeah, sure.
There is very the government ministers, even like Welsh government ministers, don't seem to realise they are incredibly powerful. They have huge ability in terms of the actual powers they have, but also the authority that they can command and how much what they say actually matters. And when there is a political will to do it, we saw with COVID, things can happen.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like when there's political will to do it, when an ITV drama gets made about the post office scandal, then people start to actually talk about
Yeah.
it. So what's Sheen doing? Why is he not writing this script? Sheeno.
Well, do you remember, like, no governments were really acting on plastics, and then David Attenborough made a really powerful documentary, and suddenly governments were really, really, really passionate about that.
You're right. What's Attenborough doing about this?
Well,
I'm gonna call him out.
Yeah, I shame him.
Do you know my favourite David Attenborough fact?
What?
He is older than sliced bread. It's a good fact, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, how old is sliced bread?
I think like 85 years. In its 80s. So before that, there was no pre-sliced bread.
So before sliced bread, did people refer to sliced bread when it came in as the best thing since David Attenborough?
Oh, yeah, I think so. Yeah. That was just a fucking pipe dream. That's a real pipe dream, isn't it? The be able to pick up bread that is pre-sliced.
So I mean, this is why I do the pod.
Some people listen to it for brilliant analysis of our country. Some people listen to it.
They're idiots.
Yeah.
Right. I want to move on and I want to talk about some polling. I want to talk about some Welsh independence polling.
Okay.
So, some polling. Now, this polling was commissioned by Yes Cymru.
Sure.
Who are one of the movements trying to advocate for Welsh independence. So, this email landed in my inbox a couple of weeks ago, and it said, it had quite a strong headline. It said, a majority of people in Wales would vote for independence where an independent Wales could rejoin the EU. So basically, most people in Wales would vote for Welsh independence if an independent Wales was guaranteed to be able to join the European Union.
It's a long headline.
It was a very long headline. Yeah. Kind of journalistically, my initial thought was, okay, I'm not really sure about that.
Sure.
So I wanted to look at the data. And actually, it did say that, but what it had done, it had left out the don't knows.
Yeah.
Which is like a classic. So people who answer don't know tend to either don't know, obviously, or they don't really understand the question.
Sure.
And that's what you find a lot, where they'll do polling on like your favourite Welsh political leaders. People like Jane Dodds or Rhys ap Iorwerth will have like really high, if you look at the don't knows, but like 60% of the people have put don't know because they don't know who they are.
We should have let this don't know.
Yeah. So with this polling, I then asked them for it to include the don't knows, and I got the results back, so I'll talk you through them. Now, if we include the don't knows, if they are asked a straight question, so this is like a legitimate poll. It was done by Redfield and Wilton Strategies. It asks like a representative amount of people in Wales. Obviously, it's just a poll. But we can extrapolate, and they've got a history of being fairly accurate in the past. So, when asked a straight question, how would you vote if you were asked, should Wales be an independent country? 35% said yes, 50% said no, and 15% said don't know.
Okay.
So exactly half of people said no, but 35% saying yes, from what I can tell, is the highest amount ever. The second highest was in 2023 when it was 34%, and that was like the aftermath of Liz Truss.
Yeah, sure. That is high, isn't it? I remember during, I think, at some point in 2020, I know Yes Cymru's membership spiked. Yeah. And I think there was sort of decent levels of support then, I think, as people were wanting to be sort of anti-Boris.
Oh, yeah. So Welsh independence, it spikes when... it spiked after Brexit. It spiked after Liz Truss. It spiked during COVID, especially when Rishi Sunak refused to extend furlough for Wales. And it seems to be increasing again because of like an underwhelming Labour administration in London. Yeah. And I think from the independent, I mean, I'm not advocating for Welsh independence, by the way, but I think from the point of view of the Welsh independence movement, the issue they've got is when people support it, it seems to be like, oh, we don't like the UK. not necessarily because everyone's going like, oh, Wales is doing amazing, we should be independent. It's because they're not happy with what's happening in the wider UK.
Do you think that was the same with sort of, obviously Scottish was, on a knife edge in terms of 2014?
2014, yeah.
2014. Do you think there was a similar kind of mindset with that, of kind of Scottish voters being kind of anti-Clegg Cameron, or do you think it was more pro-Scotland?
I think it was more pro-Scotland. I think you can't argue that the Scots are much more confident in their nation than the Welsh are. Like, I think that's pretty unequivocal. But I think that there is still, I mean, one of the big things around why people eventually just about voted no was because people weren't sure about the financials. There was unanswered questions, wasn't there? We have been saying for a while we're going to do an independence episode, and I think we should do that.
100%.
But what I...
Sorry, 35%.
But what I will do that when Mel's here as well, because, you want that kind of crazy greyhound-owning Tory view.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, she's serving 10 to 15, so, like, when she gets out of prison,
we throw so much shade at Mel today.
Yeah. 100%.
Mel, if you're listening, I want to clarify this was all Robin's idea.
Fuck?
Right, we're gonna break down these figures around independence a little bit more.
Okay.
So they also have done it based on how people voted. So what percentage of Tories do you think voted no, and what percentage do you think voted yes?
I think Welsh independence, I think 95% voted no and 5% yes.
So 20% voted yes, and
wow,
65-ish% voted no. And then the rest don't knows.
Sure.
So 20% 80% of people who voted Tory didn't vote for Welsh independence.
Sure.
Which is, I still think, higher than you'd expect it.
That is higher than I expect. What are they? Are they well?
Well, if they're a Tory voter based on their age demographics, almost certainly not.
Sure, yeah.
Labour. This one's an interesting one. I've taken out the don't knows. So what percentage... how close do you think the yes and no were for Labour voters?
I think quite close. I think very, very close. I think you taking out the don't knows has baffled me.
Well, don't just say the difference between the yes and the no's. You don't have to give me an exact percentage.
10%.
It was exactly equal. Exactly equal.
No
so
way.
41%, 41%, then with like 18% don't knows. So
these cowards voting don't know, man. Fucking backs us a poll, doesn't matter. Back yourself.
But isn't it interesting that Labour voters in Wales, half of them would support an independent Wales?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that also sums up why it's so crazy for Welsh Labour to be so kowtowed and subservient to UK Labour.
Also, Plaid must be furious because that's their raison d'etre, isn't it? Yeah, exactly. If you guys want this, then politically as well, being on the left, centre left, then there's so much crossover. How can Plaid get those people? I imagine there will be people.
That's what they're trying to do.
Migrating, right?
Yeah. Well, because the question when people say who do you vote for, it's who did you vote for in the last election. So it's not who do you support now.
Yeah.
I also think when we say why have these people not going to Plaid, there's this thing called salience, and that's how much an issue actually matters. Because I think a lot of people, offered a for or against, go, oh yeah, I'd vote this way. But they don't think about it as part of their day-to-day lives. If you ask them to rank all the things they care about, they're not putting Welsh independence near the top.
Yeah, sure.
It's like that's the problem with referendums. Not many people really gave that much of a shit about the EU, but then they were presented with an either or.
Yeah.
And then you make a choice. Obviously, this one's going to be an easier one. Plaid Cymru voters.
I'm fascinated by the people that have voted no. and I think the no will be 4%.
No was 10%.
Who are these people? Is that
I vote UKIP, but I'm a massive Europhile.
Yeah. Is that just people accidentally panicking? I mean, I've said the wrong thing.
I think some people might vote Plaid Cymru because they think Wales needs a strong voice, but don't want ultimately Welsh independence. But also, we saw this in Scotland because more than half people in Scotland at some points have voted for the SNP.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean they all want Scottish independence.
Yeah.
So it was just under 80% Plaid. Reform. What do you think the Reform voter split is? There are almost no don't knows for Reform. They're unequivocal.
Well, they're very confident people. They're not going to admit they don't know something.
They speak as they think.
They have the facts. They got it off Facebook. I think it's going to be 7% want independence.
Almost dead on. So it's 10% want independence.
The same as Plaid Cymru.
Same as Plaid Cymru.
The nose now.
Oh yeah. So
Yeah.
the same amount, almost the same amount of Reform didn't do want it compared to the Plaid who don't want it.
I do want it.
But I mean, Reform was massively ahead of the Tories when it came to voting no.
Just to stay, yeah.
Yeah. This I think is quite a funny one. The Greens, 55% of Greens voted against, and 23% voted for it. But the Greens are pro-independence.
Yeah, that's funny.
It's like they don't know their own policies.
Oh, bless them.
I know, it's cute. Age. So 18 to 34s significantly support independence over not. The biggest age demographic was 25s to 34s, where it's like 63% support it.
Is taking out don't knows?
No, that's including don't knows.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which is high.
That is high. And do you think that sort of tails off in that kind of way that as you get older, you get more right wing, that kind of thing?
I did wonder this. Like, are we going to see like that drop as they get older, or is it Welshness and the idea of being Welsh is much more acceptable with young people, and that isn't you're not going to suddenly stop feeling Welsh as you get older.
Yeah, sure.
Like so. I think that is a really interesting indication of the way Welsh politics is going. The final question was, imagine a scenario where Wales could join the European Union if it was an independent country. Would you now vote? How would you now vote? And actually, if you include the don't knows, 43% said yes, 41% said no, and then there was quite a significant 15% don't knows.
Yeah.
So there's a few things to say there. The first one is, actually, do you mind me asking how you would vote in that?
If Wales to rejoin the EU...
If it was guaranteed, if Wales was independent, it would join the EU, how would you vote? You don't have to give me an answer.
No, that's fine.
I know you do BBC shifts now.
I do BBC shifts, so I should say we're all lizards. You know what? If that was a guarantee, I don't think it would change my opinion on how I was going to vote with it. I'm still probably, we talked about this maybe a couple of months ago. Yeah. I still think I'm in the indie curious sort of mold. I think I would like to have more information, economy wise and financials. I suppose if we were to rejoin the EU, that would influence that in terms of trading partners and stuff and access to that bloc. I don't know. I think it would probably make me more inclined to.
Yeah. It would move the dial, but it wouldn't necessarily say yes.
Yeah, no, that's not the absolute, like some people are Steve Bray, that is his absolute, the one who's no.
Stop Brexit.
Is he still shouting that?
Yeah.
God.
I don't think he's shouting stop Brexit. He's more accosting Conservatives and telling them that they've taken Russian money.
Wow. He must be knackered.
He must be. He's from Port Talbot as well.
Yeah.
Isn't it interesting that so many people were willing to say, I would support Welsh independence, but I don't know if it'll work. I'd be more inclined to do it if it was a part of the EU. Because what they're really saying there is, I don't want to stop Welsh independence because I'm attached to the UK. It's, I don't think Wales could do it on its own.
Do you think that's what it is?
I think there's a lot of people who... I spoke to hundreds and hundreds of people when I was researching the book, and there's something that came up across large parts of Wales, but different demographics, like right, left, north, south, old, young, was a lot of people were like, oh, I like the idea of Welsh independence, but it would never work financially. It just wouldn't work. And what's, I think, telling about that is that none of them are saying, I love Britain. Some people are. My views have always been, I think it would be crazy to have any kind of barriers on this quite small island that we all share.
Yeah.
But I think it is also symbolising of how few people have like an emotional attachment to the UK.
Yeah, sure. But I think from that EU point of view, I wonder how many people have that's the turning point for them in independence, because it throws back to a slightly rosier, positive version of a country that they want to live in, which isn't against small boats and isn't against the last sort of 10 years or so we've had. I think it sort of... I'm always wary of making the comparisons between Welsh independence and Brexit, but that idea of like how many people are passionate about the EU and being like, oh, we should go out on our own and do this. I think people probably were voting for Brexit for this rosier version of Britain where you could say what you want.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
They wanted,
you know?
they
like,
wanted a better life.
You could leave your front doors unlocked.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Genuinely, I think
Yeah.
in that kind of feeling like when they were younger and, you know, things were less scary due to the amount of information we're getting on, you know, like, whereas I wonder whether how many people are voting, you know, thinking that they would vote for Welsh independence because of rejoining the EU, wanting back into this London 2012 mindset.
Yeah. I think on that EU question, the first thing to say is this scenario would almost certainly never happen. The EU are never going to be like, yeah, go independence, you can join.
Yeah.
For one thing, there's all the countries in the EU that wouldn't want that. So places like Spain, which have areas which want to secede and be independent, like Catalonia in the Basque region, they don't want to set a precedent where someone could go independent and just join the EU. They don't want to do that at all. Places like Cyprus are really pretty nervous about areas of countries breaking off and joining for understandable reasons. Countries like Greece will vote with Cyprus in kind of solidarity with that. So there's very unlikely that Wales would ever be at a point where he's got this guarantee that it's going to join the EU. Also, when you join the EU, it affects all sorts of things like the amount that you can borrow. You'll probably have to, joining the euro might be a precondition of joining, which massively impacts your ability to like devalue your currency. So if Wales to have its own currency. So these things are really, really, really complicated, and we can explore them more in the future. But I think also if you're joining the EU and England has its current relationship with the EU, you're creating a hard border down Offa's Dyke, which is absolutely bananas.
Yeah, that's wild.
That is, you can't possibly do that. So this is what the independence movement, and some of them within it are actually trying to do this, need to have kind of strong answers to these questions. But the other point to make is, if you are voting for Welsh independence as a vehicle for joining the EU, that's crazy because it would probably take, I think, at least 2 decades to get to that point where it's actually joining. It's really hard to join the EU, especially if you've been out of it for a while.
You say like that, and I've tried.
I've tried. I've
Will
queued
Hayward.
outside. I've queued outside.
Please.
I know. I've tried to get Splot in Cardiff to join.
Can you imagine? I like that a lot. A hard border down Offa's Dyke. I mean, considering our train travel goes back and forth into England about 6 times per journey going from south to north.
Yeah. I mean, imagine if you couldn't have free movements of goods across that.
Yeah.
Imagine if you had to have different standards. It just doesn't work. You think it's hard solving it between Northern Ireland and Ireland. Imagine trying to do that between England and Wales. It isn't feasible. It doesn't mean that Wales couldn't be independent. It doesn't mean that Wales couldn't one day join the EU if it was independent. But a lot of questions need to be answered before you do that.
Yeah, fair. Well, thank you, William.
Mel, she's back next week, isn't she?
I hope so.
Yeah, so do I.
I do miss you, Mel. Bye. I'm tired. Yes, we'll be back next week. If you have any questions or any comments, then get in touch with us either via Instagram or forwalescwales@gmail.com. If you've enjoyed the podcast, then share it with a friend. You know, you can always, any of the clips we put out, then share it to your stories, all that kind of stuff. We always appreciate that. And you can get merch online, and you can sponsor us as well if you fancy it. I went to the Cardiff City on Saturday to watch us nearly get relegated. And, you know, you can sponsor individual players, like Watches of Bath sponsor even Horvath and stuff. I'd really like, if we don't get one big sponsor for the pod, I'd like us individually to get sponsored. So it could be like, hi, I'm Robin Morgan, sponsored by Amazon, something like that.
Yeah, Mel Owen, sponsored by Betfair.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think it'd be really fun.
Big shout out to Heyman Media. One thing that they do is they do video storytelling. If you've got want to do like kind of an advert, or you want to do a video for your website or something like that, they can go, they can shoot it, they can plan it with you, and then they can edit it all, and it looks super, super professional.
Yeah.
They did the first promo video for this, and I think we got like thousands of listens on the first one just off the back of that advert.
Everything they do looks great, sounds great, and they're also nice people, which I think is worth mentioning as well. It's nice when people are nice.
I mean, they've polished the turd that is Will Hayward for 6 months now.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's shining.
Absolutely. So big shout out to them. You've got a newsletter.
Yep, I've got a newsletter. It's called the Will Hayward Newsletter. Sign up, give it a like. You can even pay, and then you get to read the whole newsletter. But you can just subscribe for free, and then by the time you've got to it, you'll want to pay for it.
Yeah, absolutely. My name's Robin Morgan. I've got a new tour on sale that is in 2026. So you've got nearly a year to buy tickets for it. Don't buy tickets and then assume it's this year, like a lot of people have already. You can do that on my website, robinjmorgan.co.uk. Mel Owen is a fantastic comedian, and she's doing shows at Machynlleth Comedy Festival. I think her solo show is nearly sold out, but it's called Melodrama, and I've seen bits of new material that she's been doing in it, and it is fabulous. So you should absolutely go and see Mel.
And all of you who've been emailing, I've been replying to you all. I've got a good list of questions. One person says we need to start going, yeah, to each other. And we do that actually quite a lot. They said nice things as well.
Yeah.
We're a really nice organisation. You can sponsor us.
Yeah. I just did it. It's me. It's me they're criticising. Give me their email address. Let's break GDPR rules.
I will be going through those in a show, so I'm not ignoring you all, the ones I haven't replied to yet. I think I've replied to most of you. But thanks. I'm Will Hayward.
I'm Robin Morgan. Goodbye.
Bye.